The street into town was lined with souvenir shops and infested with inn touts. Just as in other port towns, the apprentice again lost sight of his master and searched the crowd worriedly until the man emerged from a toy shop with a small, colorful pinwheel. "Iwa," he cried to the boy. "Yes, sir. Carry this. Be careful it doesn't get broken. Stick it in your collar." "Souvenir for the baby?" Grunted the man. After being away on a job for a few days, he was looking forward to seeing the child's grin of delight when he handed it over. Okay, this chapter is the Pinwheel. So Musashi goes on through his travels trying to get to Densen Sharo and his date with him. And he runs into a man known as Bayaken. Happy to learn that this man has a style that's different from the rest of the Japanese warriors. This man uses the ball, chain, and the sickle as his weapon of choice. So in an effort to learn, Musashi goes back to his house on a previous night, I think the night that he was sick with his foot. But Bacon wasn't there. His wife hosted him. However, he left that night, and now he's back again. So Bacon gets wind of Musashi being formerly known as Takezo, and he remembers that Takezo had an encounter in the field of the Sekigahara with his brother, and I think he ended up killing his brother. So anyway, this martial art that is used by Bacon gives seed to Musashi's fighting style that he would use for the rest of his life. So I'm going to read a little bit about how this comes about. "Ah, come on," Bacon insisted. "You said you wanted to hear more about the chain, ball, sickle. I'll tell you everything I know, but let's have a few drinks while we're talking." When Iwa returned with the sake, Bacon poured some into a heating jar, put it on the fire, and talked at great length about the chain, ball, sickle, and ways to use it to advantage in actual combat. The best thing about it, he told Musashi, was that unlike his sword, it gave the enemy no time to defend himself. Also, before attacking the enemy directly, it was possible to snatch his weapon away from him with the chain. A skillful throw of the chain, a sharp yank, and the enemy had no more sword. Still seated, Bacon demonstrated a stance. You see, you hold the sickle in your left hand and the ball in your right. If the enemy comes at you, you take him on with the blade, then hurl the ball at his face. That's one way. Changing positions, he went on. Now, in this case, when there's some space between you and the enemy, you take his weapon away with the chain. It doesn't make any difference what kind of a weapon it is, sword, lance, wooden staff, or whatever. Bacon went on and on, telling Musashi about ways of throwing the ball, about the 10 or more oral traditions concerning the weapon, about how the chain was like a snake, about how it was possible by cleverly alternating the movements of the chain and the sickle to create optical illusions and cause the enemy's defense to work to his own detriment, about all the secret ways of using the weapon. Musashi was fascinated. When he heard talk like this, he listened with his whole body, eager to absorb every detail. The chain, the sickle, 2 hands. As he listened, the seeds of other thoughts formed in his mind. The sword can be used with 1 hand, but a man has 2 hands. Yeah, so Musashi eventually, and I don't want to give away too much of the book, but he eventually takes this lesson that he's learning to heart, and he uses 2 weapons. Short sword and a regular sword in both hands, which was, to most people during this time in Japan, was unconventional. You used 1 sword, both hands. So this is how Musashi develops, right? He pays attention to everything. As I've said in other chapters, he pays attention. He's a true student of everybody and everything. So he's listening and he's developing this idea in his mind. The chapter goes on. This Bacon guy ultimately tries to assault Musashi by sabotaging him and getting him drunk and getting him to fall asleep. And where the pinwheel comes in is that this pinwheel, if you've ever seen one, it's one of those little artsy fan type of things that rotates, spins with the wind. So Musashi falls asleep, has a nightmare, but it's a dream that kind of keeps him awake. But there's a pinwheel by the door, and he sees it moving, and he says, "Whoa, why is that moving?" And he figures out, oh, there's people outside opening the door. Why are there people opening the door? So he gets up, kind of hides, but the warriors, they assume he left because they barge in trying to attack Musashi, but he's not there. So they go off and they try to find him. But in the end, Musashi's actually in the house. He's just hiding. So that pinwheel kind of sabotages the trap. Musashi, once again, inevitably gets away, and Bacon is left not knowing what happened. The pinwheel was sleeping too. If it were not for the paper wrapping, thought Musashi, the wheel might wake in the morning and turn wildly at the sight of its master's head fallen from the pillow. When Musashi had killed Tsukaze Tema, he had had a reason, for anyway, he was still burning with the fever of battle. But he had nothing to gain from taking the blacksmith's life. And who could tell, if he did kill him, the infant owner of the pinwheel might spend his life seeking to avenge his father's murder. It was a night on which Musashi had thought time and again of his own father and mother. He felt a little envious as he stood there by the sleeping family, sensing the faint sweet scent of mother's milk about him. He even felt a little reluctant to take his leave. In his heart, he spoke to them. "I'm sorry to have troubled you. Sleep well." He quietly opened the outer door and went out. All right, folks, pay attention. Listen. When you listen with your whole body. Till next time, peace and be well.